Welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All the cards you see in our videos are $1 or less, with exception of the commander cards. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when a new video comes out. Hi and welcome to another episode of Budget MTG Decks. I'm David and today we're going to be reviewing and evaluating one of the 2019 pre-constructed commander decks called Mystic Intellect. This deck is white, blue, and red, also known as a Jeskai deck. And at the helm we have Sevinne the Chronoclasm for 2, a blue, a red, and a white. So for 5 mana, we get a 2/2 human wizard, which also states that prevent all damage that would be dealt to this creature. And whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard, each turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So the strategy of this deck is actually very simple. We're going to be playing cards that synergize well with instants and sorceries. And we're going to be finding ways to play instants and sorceries from our graveyard over and over again, usually with a flashback. But there's also other ways to play cards from our graveyard. And then finally, we're going to kill our opponents with either tokens, burn spells, or just beating our opponents down. So the price of this deck differs depending on where you get it, obviously. We did have a look at the cards that we're going to be using to upgrade this deck. We limited ourselves in this case to 14 cards coming in below $25. So remember that if you want to get this deck or maybe the upgrades for this deck, you can use the link in the description below, which will bring you to the TCG Player or website. And if you're going to buy something there, it helps other channel a lot because we get a small percentage from anything you purchase there. So if you want to help us out, you want to get this deck, you want to get some upgrades, you want to get anything else at all, just use the link in the description below. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does help out the channel. So thank you very much for doing that. Now let's have a look at the deck list grouped by category. We divided the synergy cards into those that synergize well with instants and sorceries, those that synergize with the graveyard, and other cards. To start off, we got Gutter Snipe, Talrun, Sky Summoner, and Elsha of the Infinite. Gutter Snipe is for 3 mana, a 2/2 goblin, and whenever we cast an instant sorcery, we're going to deal 2 damage to each opponent. Now remember, we're usually going to be playing with, let's say, 4 players, so every instant sorcery is going to be 6 points of damage distributed amongst our opponents, so that is quite a lot, actually. Talrun Sky Summoner states that whenever we cast an instant sorcery spell, we're going to get a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying, so that's very nice. Going to be building up our token army as we play instants and sorceries. And Elsha of the Infinite costs 2, a blue, a red, and a white. So for 5 mana, we get a 3/3 Jin Monk with prowess. And additionally, you may look at the top of your library anytime you want. So that's cool, so we can see what's coming up. And you may cast the top of your library if it's a non-creature, non-land card. And you may cast it as though it had flash, which is going to be brutal for all those sorcery spells that we can now play instant speed as a surprise. And of course, it's kind of card draw because we can go through our library a little bit faster, as we can always play the top card of our library as long as it's a non-creature, non-land card. This is actually also a very good contender to be its own commander. Then we have a Jace's Sanctum, Pristine Skywise, and Pristine Angel. Jace's Sanctum for 4 mana, it's an enchantment, states instant sorcery spells you cost 1 less to cast, which is very nice. It's a nice little discount on our instants and sorceries. And whenever we do play an instant or sorcery, we're going to scry once. It's kind of like half a draw right there, so that's good value. Pristine Skywise and Pristine Angel, kind of similar. Both cost 6 mana. Both are flying beaters. And whenever, with Pristine Skywise, so the dragon, whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we're going to untap it, and it's going to gain protection from the color of choice until the end of turn. And with the angel, as long as it's untapped, it has protection from artifacts and from all colors. And as well, whenever you cast a spell, you may untap it. So both of these cards, whenever we're playing instant sorceries, essentially, we can untap it whenever we want. So it kind of gives the pseudo vigilance and kind of protection. But that's pretty much it. So kind of a weird inclusion, these cards. Not really sure how these synergize well with the overall strategy of the deck. Then we have a Crackling Drake, Increasing Vengeance, and Refuse to Cooperate. A Crackling Drake costs 4, enters the battlefield. It's a X4 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, we're going to be drawing a card, and its power is equal to the number of instant sorceries in exile and in our graveyard. So that's really cool. It's actually going to get very big, although its toughness does not increase. And it does replace itself with a card draw. Increasing Vengeance, very powerful card. Awesome that I got a reprint over here for 2 red. Instant speed, copy instant or sorcery spell. If it was cast from our graveyard, so for example for its flashback cost, which is 5, then we're going to be copying it twice and we can choose new copies. So this is a very, very strong copy instant or sorcery spell and great to see it again in here. Refuse to cooperate. First half, refuse for 4 mana. Instant, refuse deals damage to target player's controller equal to its spell. The spell's converted mana cost. So somebody plays, you know, I'm going to play my 6 mana creature, and you say, okay, cool, but you're going to take 6 damage though. For 4 mana, kind of steep to deal a bit of damage. Not a big fan. Cooperate for 3 mana. We can only play this from our graveyard. Of course, yes, we do get value playing stuff from our graveyard, but it does say copy target instance or sorcery spell. You may choose new target. So this is actually very nice. We're going to be copying a spell. So yeah, just use the refuse to get the card in the graveyard. Doesn't really matter how much, but then once we got to cooperate, that's where we're going to be getting the value out of copying cool spells. Instant speed. Then we have the cards that synergize well with the graveyard. We've got Thalia's Geistcaller, Burning Vengeance, and Secrets of the Dead. Thalia's Geistcaller states that whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, we're going to create a 1/1 flyer. And we can also sacrifice a spirit to make this creature indestructible. That's nice, it's going to stick around for a while. And it also has lifelink. Very, very interesting new card that they included in here. Also very cool to see a white card that synergizes well with instants or sorceries in this case, because we're going to be playing stuff from our graveyard, which are going to be those instants and sorceries. Then we have Burning Vengeance. Also, whenever we play, it's an enchantment in this case, and whenever we play a card from our graveyard, we're going to be dealing 2 damage to target creature or player. Solid. And Secrets of the Dead, essentially the same, but whenever we play a card from our graveyard, we're going to be drawing a card. So these 3 cards all give us extra value when we're doing casting those spells with flashback back from our graveyard. And then we have River Kelpie for 3 and 2 blue. It's a 3/3 beast, and whenever River Kelpie or another permanent is put into play from a graveyard, you draw a card. This is cool when we do have a few ways of getting also permanents back from our graveyard back to the battlefield. This thing's going to be drawing this card, but also whenever we play a spell from our graveyard, we're going to be drawing a card. And River Kelpie also comes back from the graveyard once it dies the first time with Persist. So plenty of card drop opportunity with River Kelpie. Beautiful card. Also happy to see a reprint over here now. Then we have the other cards. Didn't really know where these would fit very well, so we just made another category. Doesn't really work well with any of the other categories that we created, so we just made another category. Increasing Devotion and Storm Herd. Both these cards just put a butt ton of tokens onto the battlefield. Increasing Devotion puts down 5, and then it's going to be putting 10 onto the battlefield if we play it with flashback from our graveyard, but that costs 9 mana, which is kind of steep. Very hard to do that. And Storm Herd just looks at your life total and puts that many 1/1 white Pegasus tokens with flying onto the battlefield, which is going to be absolutely brutal. But then we're talking 10 mana, so we better be very patient so we can play this. But very, very strong if it's able to fire. Then we have Bloodthirsty Blade, Clever Impersonator, and Zetalpa Primal Dawn. Very random cards in this deck. Bloodthirsty Blade costs 2. It's an equipment, and we can the equipped creature gets +2/+0 and is goaded, which means it attacks each combat if able, and attacks a player other than you if able. And for 1 mana, we can attach it to target creature an opponent controls, and we can only activate this as a sorcery. So essentially what we're going to be doing is we just pop this on the table, equip it onto a creature our opponents control that we really don't want to get hit with, and they're going to be forced to attack somebody else with it, which is fun, but doesn't really have anything to do with the deck. Clever Impersonator for 4 mana, a 0/0 shapeshifter, enters the battlefield as a copy of any non-land permanent on the battlefield. Very strong card. Beautiful that it got reprinted. Kind of random that it's in this deck. Doesn't really care about instances of sorceries or stuff from the graveyard. It's just going to make a copy of whatever the best thing is, including an artifact or enchantment, or a planeswalker for that matter. But doesn't seem to have a good reason for being in this deck, other than the fact that it's just a really good card. And same thing for Zetalpa Primal Dawn. Yes, you're paying 8 mana. Yes, you're getting a 4/8 flying double strike, vigilance, trample, indestructible. But what does it have to do with Mystic Intellect? I don't know, but it's just a solid card, I guess. All right, that is it for the synergy cards. Let's have a look at the protection cards. We divided the protection cards into those that protect against targeted removal, the counter spells, and those that protect us against damage. First, we're going to start with Cliffside Rescuer, one of the new cards in this set. It's for 1 and a white. It's a 2/2 core soldier with vigilance, and we can tap it and sacrifice it to make sure that target permanent we own gains protection from each of our opponents until the end of turn. Protects us against everything. They can't be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, enchanted, or equipped by anything controlled by this player, so it pretty much protects them. Of course, it doesn't protect against board wipes, but any targeted removal will fizzle against if we sacrifice Cliffside Rescuer. Then we go to the counterspell. We got Fervent Denial, so you're really denying this very strongly. For 5 mana, it's a counterspell, instant speed, but for flashback of 7, we can cast it again from our graveyard. 5 mana for a counterspell is kind of steep, considering we usually like playing counterspell for 2 mana, and we can get a cancel for 3. 5 is kind of steep, and then 7, just because it has a flashback for 7, is kind of expensive. But okay, we have a counterspell in this deck. Then the spells that protects against damage, we got Mandate of Peace and Prismatic Strands. For 2, it's an instant Mandate of Peace. Cast this spell only during combat, and our opponents can't cast spells this turn, and we end the combat phase. So essentially what it does is for 1 turn it says, okay, we're removing everybody from combat, we're not dealing damage, everybody just stop. You can't respond to it because you can't cast any spells either, so okay, the combat is over, fine. That costs us a card, okay. New inclusion, not sure why this would be a very exciting card, but it's in there. Prismatic Strands, reprint for 2 and a white, so for 3 mana it's an instant. Prevent all damage that sources of color of your choice would deal this turn. It also has a flashback, and we can tap and untap a white creature we control, so we can play it again. So 2 times we can make sure that all damage the sources of a single color. So 2 times we can make sure, okay, all these black creatures can't deal damage to us. Okay. That is it for the cards that protect us against direct damage from combat. Now we go to Ghostly Prison and Primicon Sky Rampart. Ghostly Prison, beautiful card. Very happy to see it reprinted for 3 mana enchantment. Awesome. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature he or she controls that's attacking you. So this is great. It makes it really difficult for token players to attack you. And if people do want to attack you, they will need to pay the 2 mana for each creature. So that means you're going to be taking much, much less damage. And Primicon Sky Rampart, a new card for 3 mana, a 1/5 defender with flying. And it's going to, when it enters the battlefield, we're going to choose either left or right. And then each player can only attack opponents in that direction. So it essentially really limits the combat for everybody, actually, because everybody's only going to be able to attack, for example, left, and everybody's going to be able to attack the one person to their left instead of being able to attack everybody at the table. So that really reduces the amount of damage that you can take. Interesting card. Not sure how it synergizes well with this strategy, but that is it for the protection cards. Let's have a look at the control spells. We divided the control spells into those that deal with creatures, non-creatures, and the board wipes. We're going to start with Devil's Play, Leadership Vacuum, and Farm to Market. Devil's Play costs X and a red. It's a sorcery. We're going to deal X damage to target creature or player, and we have a flashback cost of X and triple red. Very expensive to flashback it. But this is a nice card for either just dealing with creatures or, of course, later on in the game when people are low, just doing it directly to our opponent's faces to kill them. Leadership Vacuum is one of the new cards in the set for 3 mana. It's an instant. We're going to have target player return each commander they control from the battlefield to the command zone and drawing a card. Very strong card, very cheaply costed. Hits their commander. We don't have to, it's not a targeted, so even if they have hexproof, it doesn't matter. It's still going to go back to the command zone, and it also replaces itself with a card draw. I'm very happy to see this card. Very nice. And then we have Farm to Market for 2 and a white. We get the farm section. It's an instant, destroy target attacking or blocking creature. So for 3 mana, destroy a target creature is very nice. Of course, with white, we kind of limited because you can't really destroy creatures like that. But if they're attacking or blocking, then they're fair game. And the market aspect, we can only play out from the graveyard, draw 2 cards, and then discard 2 cards. So we can kind of... we can kind of search for our answers, perhaps. It's not a fantastic card, but the farm part is pretty nice, being able to have some nice removal there. Then we have Wall of Stolen Identity and Ral Zarek. Wall of Stolen Identity is one of the new cards in this commander product. For 4 mana, it's a 0/0 wall, and when it comes in, it's going to become a copy of a creature on the battlefield, except it's also going to be a wall, in addition to its other types, so it will have Defender. And what it's also going to do is whichever creature it copied, that creature is going to be tapped and it won't untap as long as we control this wall. So we get the best thing, they lose their best thing because it's tapped, but we can't really use that best thing unless it's got some kind of ability, because we can't really attack or attack with it, or well, we can block with it. But in essence, it's kind of an awkward card because we're not really gonna be getting the best thing, because our best thing is also gonna have Defender. Ral Zarek, Planeswalker for 4 mana. We got 4 loyalty. Planeswalker is +1, is tap target permanent, then untap another target permanent. So that's really nice. It's closing something down, and it's giving us something else, either another tap ability for a creature, for example, or artifact for that mana, or it's going to just make sure that something has kind of pseudo vigilance. -2 deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So we're going to be using this to kill our opponent's creatures. And for his -7 is flip 5 coins, take an extra turn after this one for each coin that turns up heads. So that is going to be giving us probably at least 2 extra turns, which is going to be very, very strong. Then we move on to the non-creature control spells. That's Purify the Grave and Ray of Distortion. Purify the Grave for a single white instant, exile target card from a graveyard, and a flashback of a single white again. So essentially 2 times instant speed. When somebody's targeting something from a graveyard, we can pay a white and exile that card in response, so they don't get that value. Not spectacular. And Ray of Distortion for 4 mana. It's a reprint, instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and it has a flashback for a whopping 6 mana. So we're going to be able to destroy 2 artifacts or 2 enchantments, or an artifact and an enchantment for 10 mana. A bit expensive. There are other spells that allow us to do that for far, far cheaper. Then we move on to the board wise. We got Mass Diminish, Magma Quake, and Rolling Temblor. We've got Mass Diminish, a new card for this set for 2 mana sorcery. Until your next turn, creatures target a player controls have base power and toughness 1. Remember, they maintain their abilities. This does not take their abilities away. It just makes sure that they are very, very small, so it makes them very susceptible to damage. And it also has flashback for 4, so we can use it as a surprise, but remember that it still needs to be played sorcery speed. Then we have Magma Quake, which costs X and 2 red, instant, deal X damage to each creature without flying and each planeswalker. Now we've got some ways of making tokens that are flyers, of course, so they won't get hit. But be careful, because we also have a few just regular creatures that will die with Magma Quake. Remember that this will not affect our commander, because our commander does not take any damage. So that is actually not bad. We don't have to worry about losing our commander when we play Magma Quake. And the same counts for Rolling Temblor. For 3 mana, deals 2 damage to each creature without flying. So our commander will also stay nice and safe, and has flashback for 6. We can reuse that. Then we have Divine Reckoning for 4 mana. It's a sorcery. Each player chooses a creature he or she controls, then destroy the rest. So we're going to choose our commander and then destroy the rest. And it has flashback for 7 mana. This is actually a very, very solid card. Very nice. And very happy to see that reprinted over here. And from Dusk Till Dawn for 4 mana, we got the Dust Section sorcery. Destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. So that does not, of course, include our commander. Our commander will not die. And the Dawn part, which is we're going to be playing that from our graveyard. Return all creature cards with power 2 or less from our graveyard to our hand, and then we can, of course, replay them again. These are all very solid board-wide inclusions for this deck. That is it for the control spells. Let's have a look at the card advantage spells. We divided the card advantage spells into draw spells and recursion spells. Those are the cards that return us cards back from the graveyard back to our hand. To start off with the draw spells, we got Think Twice and Ona's Grace. Think Twice costs 2, it's an instant. We draw a card with a flashback of 3. So we can draw 2 cards for 5 mana, instant speed. Ona's Grace costs 3, instant. Target player draws their cards, we can draw a card for 3, but it also has Retrace, which means that we can pay 3 mana, discard a land, and then we can play this card again from our graveyard. And we can keep on doing that every single turn, as long as we still have lands in our hand, which is actually very, very solid card. I really like this, also because it works very well with playing cards from our graveyard repeatedly. Then we have Deep Analysis, Chemist's Insight, and Fact or Fiction. Deep Analysis for 4 mana sorcery. We're going to be drawing 2 cards, and we have flashback of 2 and pay 3 life, so we can play it again. Very solid card. This is also kind of card that you can just put in normal blue deck. Doesn't necessarily, not just because of the flashback. The flashback is very aggressively costed. Paying 3 life is fine, and drawing 2 cards 2 times for this 1 card is very solid. Chemist's Insight costs 4. It's an instant this time, draw 2 cards, but we can also jumpstart it, which means that we can cast this card from the graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other cards. So essentially, this is like Retrace, but we're not limited to a land card. The downside is that we can only do this 1 time and then it will be exiled, whereas the Retrace we can do as many times as we want. And then we have Fact or Fiction, of course, for 4 mana. Who doesn't know Fact or Fiction? Instant speed. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. Opponent separates those into 2 piles, and we put 1 pile into our hand and the other into our graveyard. This is very nice because you're usually going to be drawing 3 cards because of this. 4 mana, 3 cards is insane. It's going to be instant speed, so we can wait till our opponent's last turn before we play it, so we can see what we get. We can give it to the opponent who we think will make the worst decision, which is also great. They put it in 2 piles, but we make the final decision of which one actually goes into our hand. So this is all really good stuff. We get our opponent's choice, but it's a very, very difficult choice. Then we have Faithless Looting, Desperate Ravings, and Ignite the Future. Faithless Looting for a single red, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards. So we're going to be rummaging, and as a flashback for 3, and then we can rummage again. Solid card. Also, regular red decks like playing Faithless Looting, so they can dig for those cards that they're looking for, those answers. Desperate Ravings costs 2 mana, but is an instant. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card at random. So this actually gives us a draw, although with the downside of the card that we discard having to be random, and it does have flashback for 2, so we could do it again, netting us for 5 mana, netting us 2 cards, but we did have to discard 2 cards, netting us 4 cards, but having to lose 2 cards at random might be a bit too much of a risk for somebody like me who doesn't like too much random stuff in their games. So yeah, I think it's kind of a scary prospect. But I guess if you're desperate, then you play it. Ignite the Future costs 4. It's a new card for this commander product. For 4 mana, it's a sorcery. Exile the top 3 cards of your library until the end of your turn. You may play those cards. If the spell was cast from your graveyard, you may play those cards without paying their mana cost. So we pay 4 mana, we look at the top 3 cards essentially, then we still have mana, we play any of those we want. Of course, if it's a land, we haven't played a land yet, we can do that. But if we played for 8 mana from flashback cost, we're basically just going to be able to play all those 3 cards. I think it is kind of not, you don't really get a lot of cards for what you pay for in this case. But yeah, interesting. I mean, it does kind of draw you 3 cards in essence, and in red, it's as good as you can hope for. In essence, this kind of play cards till the end of the turn and then they're gone, kind of a draw. But we have access to blue in this deck, so there's probably better ways to draw cards. Then we have Runic Repetition, Mystic Retrieval, and Backdraft Hellkite. These are the cards that have to do with our recursion of cards. Runic Repetition for 3, we get a sorcery, return target exiled card with flashback you own to your hand. So yes, we play a card with flashback regularly, it goes to our graveyard, then we play its flashback cost, then it goes into exile, and then we can play Runic Repetition to once again put it into our hand. We can repeat the whole process again. Mystic Retrieval costs 4, it's a sorcery. We're going to return target instance or sorcery card from our graveyard to our hand, and then for 3 mana with flashback, we can do it again. Very, very strong card. And Backdraft Hellkite for 5 mana. We get a 4/4 dragon with flying. This is a new card specially made for this set. And whenever this dragon attacks, each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of the turn, and flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. So this is absolutely brutal card, especially for this deck. It is exactly what this deck wants. Backdraft Hellkite, bam, 100% A+ inclusion in this deck. Nice design. Works well, synergy is beautiful, it's a dragon flying, and what's not to love? Backdraft as well, the name is cool. Then we move on to Sevinne's Reclamation, Gerard, Weatherlight Hero, and Sun Titan. Sevinne's Reclamation costs 3, it's a sorcery, return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and if this was cast from the graveyard, you may copy the spell and choose a new target for the copy. So essentially what this means is we can play, we can get, for 3 mana, we can get 1 permanent converted mana cost 3 or less back, and then later on for 5, we're going to get 2 back. So this is good value. This deck is not playing tons of permanents. Should not be playing tons of permanents because it wants to focus on instants and sorcery, but yes, there are a few permanents that care about instants and sorcery, so we're able to get that back with this one. Gerard, Weatherlight Hero costs 4. It's a 3/3 human soldier with first strike, and when it dies, we're going to return it to the we're going to exile it, and then return to the battlefield all artifacts and creature cards in the graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. So essentially, this is a great anti-board wipe card, very relevant to permanents, mostly artifacts and creature cards, so not all permanents. Still kind of a weird inclusion here. Good anti-board wipe, but I would say why not just counter a spell if you want to avoid that. But okay, then we move on to Sun Titan for 4 and 2 white, a 6/6 vigilance giant. And whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Sun Titan is a beautiful card. It is an amazing card. It is very strong. I love it. It is, you know, just like pretty much all the Titans, except for maybe the blue one. Very solid inclusion in the deck. However, in a deck which cares a lot about instant sorceries, cares about the graveyard, cares about casting instant sorceries from the graveyard, it's kind of weird to have this in here. But it's still a very solid card, so, you know, why not? I'm not going to be complaining when a Sun Titan's in the deck. That is it for the card advantage cards. Let's have a look at the ramp cards. We divided the ramp spells into land fetch cards and mana rocks. We start with Armillary Sphere, Burnished Heart, and Scare Tiller. Armillary Sphere for 2 mana, it's an artifact. We can pay 2 mana and sacrifice to search for 2 basic land cards, reveal them, put them into our hand, then shuffle our library. So it doesn't really mana ramp us, but does make sure we hit those land drops. Burnished Heart costs 3 and can be sacrificed for 3 to search for 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Amazing, beautiful. I will always love it when this card gets reprinted. Every single deck wants to play it because it's colorless, except for maybe decks which are heavy in green because they might have better options, but Burnished Heart is an absolutely beautiful card. Scare Tiller, cost 4, you get a 1/4 Scarecrow that whenever it becomes tapped, you can either put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, or return a land card from a graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Kind of an awkward card. A lot of the other decks also have this card in there, and it's just seems kind of awkward. It doesn't really mana ramp you when it comes in because you gotta wait till you can attack, and you gotta hope that it doesn't die when it gets attacked. You gotta make sure you actually have a land in your hand for it to work, or make sure you have a land in your graveyard, but the deck doesn't really have a good way of forcing lands into your graveyard, so it's kind of a weird card. Fun picture, but, you know, kind of weird. Then we have the mana rocks. We got Soul Ring, Azorius Locket, and Izzet Locket. Soul Ring, I don't really need to say anything about that. It's just incredibly powerful. For 1 mana, tap it, 2, you get 2 colorless. It's banned in every other format for a reason, pretty much. And yeah, I don't think Wizards of the Coast can actually make a Commander product without Soul Ring at this point. So yeah, it's in there. And Azorius Locket and Izzet Locket. Yeah, just not great. For 3 mana, a mana rock that taps for 1 of 2 colors. Then just, if you're going to be paying 3 mana, then just get a mana rock that taps for mana of any color. And yes, you can pay 4 to sacrifice, to tap and sacrifice to draw 2 cards, but there's also way better ways to draw cards. So these lockets are just not, just put in signets. Signets are far better. But okay, these are in here. That's what we got. Then we move on to Dockside Extortionist, Commander Sphere, and Empowered Auto Generator. Dockside Extortionist costs 2. It's a 1/2 Goblin Pirate, and when it enters the battlefield, we're going to create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. So this is cool, especially later on in the game. We play this, our opponents are going to have tons and tons of artifacts and enchantments. Then we can have tons of treasures. This is going to really give us a lot of mana ramp, essentially. And then Commander Sphere, good example of what you want to be paying for 3 mana. Why? Because it taps for mana of any color, and we can also sacrifice it to draw a card. We don't have to pay any mana, we just sacrifice it. People say, I'm going to remove it, doesn't matter, we sacrifice it, draw a card. Perfect card, beautiful. And Empowered Auto Generator for 4 mana. When it enters the battlefield, it's going to enter tapped, but then we're going to tap it and put a charge counter on it, and we're going to add X mana of any 1 color, where X is the number of charge counters on it. So essentially on turn 4, the earliest comes in, it doesn't do anything, and then turn 5 we can tap it and then we gain 1 mana of any color, and then turn 6 we get 2. So yes, if we're playing the extremely long game, it will be able to generate tons and tons of mana until obviously somebody naturalizes it or something. But I think it's interesting card. I don't think it's going to give you enough value over the course of the game, unfortunately. that is it for the ramp cards. Let's have a look at the lands. Wizard of the Coast divided the lands into 9 plains, 8 islands, 4 mountains, and 19 non-basic lands. And we're going to go through these kind of rapid fire. We're going to start with Tranquil Cove, Swiftwater Cliffs, and Windscarred Crag. All come in tapped, give us 1 or 2 colors, and give us a life when they come in. We got Is It Guildgate, Highland Lake, and Stone Quarry. All come in tapped, give us 1 of 2 colors, but don't give us a life. Then we have Boros Guildgate and Prairie Stream. Boros Guildgate is the same as the previous cards, but a Prairie Stream enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Then we have Boros Garrison, Is It Boilerworks, and Azorius Chancery. All come in tapped. We have to bounce a land back to our hand when it comes in, but they tap for 2 mana of 2 combinations of colors. Then we have Mystic Monastery, Exotic Orchard, and Command Tower. All give us pretty much any mana we want. Mystic Monastery does come in tapped though, and Exotic Orchard produces mana of any land an opponent controls, but that's going to be pretty much everything. And Command Tower, just any color that are the color identity of our commander. Then we have Ash Barrens and Temple of the False God. Ash Barrens taps for colorless, but we can also basic land cycle it, which means when it's in our hand, we can pay a mana and then discard it and search for a basic land card, put it into our hand. So it's nice to get that color that we need. And Temple of the False God taps for 2 colorless, but we do need to make sure we have 5 or more lands. But we count Temple of the False God, so you just need 4 other lands and Temple of the False God for it to tap for mana. And then finally, we have Myriad Landscape, Evolving Wilds, and Terramorphic Expanse. Myriad Landscape, we can it comes in tapped, but we can also tap it for mana, but we can also pay 2 mana and sacrifice it to search for 2 basic land cards that are the same, put them onto the battlefield tapped. And Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, on the turn they come in, we can immediately tap them and sacrifice them to put a basic land card from our library onto the battlefield tapped. That is it for the lands. Now let's have a look at the upgrades that we've selected for this deck. Okay, to start off with the upgrades, we've decided to include Pariah and Pariah Shield. Now, Pariah costs 2 any white, so for 3 mana we get an enchantment aura, and it states that all damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to enchanted creature instead. Now, this is an absolutely hilarious card to enchant our commander with because, of course, our commander doesn't take any damage, which means that whenever our opponents attack us and we have our commander enchanted with Pariah, we can just let all the damage come through because all the damage, including the commander damage, will be dealt to our commander instead, and of course our commander doesn't take any damage. So essentially, combat doesn't really matter to us anymore at this point. And we decided to take out Prismatic Strands, which also stops combat damage in essence 2 times, but Pariah just seems so much more valuable as it just neuters combat entirely for our opponents. And then we have Pariah Shield, costs 5 mana, a little bit more expensive with equip cost of 3. States all damage that will be dealt to you is dealt to a equipped creature instead. So essentially the same thing, but now it's a little bit more expensive because it's an artifact, so we can over-equip it to something else if we want. And it's going to be doing exactly the same thing. Our commander doesn't take any damage, so now we can just let everybody attack us if they want to. Doesn't really matter. We're playing our instants, our sorceries, getting our value from our flashback. And people are going to be attacking us, and it doesn't matter because our commander can just take all the punishment. Let's take out Mandate of Peace for that, which really only kind of did the same thing, just stopped combat 1 time. But Pariah Shield and Pariah just neuter combat entirely for our opponents. Then we have Precognition Field, bonus round, and Melek Is It Paragon. Precognition Field is an enchantment that costs 4 mana. You may look at the top card of your library, which is very nice. And you may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card. Very strong. Because we will be focusing on those instant sorceries, and we can just run right through our library like that if we have a bunch of instant sorceries. And if we don't, if on top, for example, there's a land that we don't need, we can pay 3 mana and exile the top of our library, top card of our library, to make sure we can dig for those instant sorceries anyway. We're going to take out Cliffside Rescuer for this card. Yes, that card can protect our commander against targeted removal, but we thought to ourselves, Precognition Field is a little bit more powerful with respect to giving us value over the course of the game. Then we have bonus round for 1 and 2 red, so for 3 mana it's a sorcery until the end of turn. Whenever a player casts an instant sorcery spell, that player copies it and may choose new targets for the copy. So we have instant sorceries, we have some ways of copying spells. We like doing that. But bonus round, especially later on in the game, allows us to copy every spell we play after this spell. that turn. Remember, it says whenever a player, so it also counts for opponents. So it's nice to maybe make sure you do this later on in the game when your opponents are tapped out, so they can't get any value out of this. And then you just play all the instants of sorceries you can and copy all of them. We took out Permicon Sky Rampart because we thought, okay, that is a card that just, all it does is just limits combat a little bit, but the bonus round really allows us to go full blast with our instants of sorceries. And we have Melek Izzet Paragon for 6 mana. It's a 2/4 weird wizard. And we get to play with the top card of our library revealed, which means now we already have 3 cards in the deck, which allows us to look at the top card. In this case, we play with the card revealed. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card, so that's very similar to Precognition Field. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may copy it from the top of your library, and you may choose new targets for the copy. So we got now multiple ways of looking, seeing what the top card of our library is. If it's an instant sorcery, we get to play it, and now with Melek, we also get to copy it. And of course, bonus round also allows us to copy stuff, so that is gravy. Absolutely beautiful. Let's get rid of Sitalpa Primal Dawn, because that's just a big fat beater. It doesn't do anything else for us synergy-wise. Then we have Niv Mizzet Perun, Metallurgic Summonings, and Pull from Eternity. Niv Mizzet Perun for 3 blue and 3 red, so it is a very difficult casting cost. So 6 mana, we get a 5/5 Dragon Wizard. It states that this spell can't be countered, which is nice. It also has flying, and whenever you draw a card, we're going to deal 1 damage to any target, and that's very nice because we have multiple ways of drawing multiple cards per turn in this deck. And whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, so not just whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, but whenever anybody casts an instant or sorcery spell, we're going to be drawing a card and of course dealing damage as well because of the first ability. This is extremely strong because it synergizes very well with what this deck wants to do, which is play instant sorceries, play them again from our graveyard, and then we're going to be drawing cards, dealing damage. We got rid of Pristine Skywise for that, which wasn't really helping us with that strategy. Metallurgic Summonings costs 5. It's an enchantment. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, created XX colors, construct artifact creature token with where X is that spell's converted mana cost. So every time we're playing instants or sorceries, we're getting little tokens on the battlefield. Well, sometimes big tokens. And it also states that for 5 mana, we can exile this enchantment and then return all instant and sorcery cards from our graveyard to our hand. And we can only do this if we control 6 or more artifacts, but we also have mana rocks and stuff. So we should be able to get this activated later on in the game and then return everything back from our hand and start playing everything again. We got rid of Pristine Angel, as it is another one of those cards that, yes, is a nice beater that's difficult to get removed, but it doesn't really add to the strategy of this deck. And then we have Pull from Eternity for a single white mana. It's an instant. Put target face-up card that's removed from the game into its owner's graveyard. So essentially, whenever one of our flashback cards got exiled, or another card got exiled for some reason, we're going to be able to put it back into our graveyard, and then we could use its flashback cost again. And we got rid of Purify the Grave, which also costs a single white, which allowed us to, 2 times get rid of a card from graveyard. Was the only thing that did that in this deck. So it's probably, if you need it, you won't have it, and this Pull from Eternity is going to get you so many more targets that you can hit through the course of the game. Then we have Mission Briefing, Bosium Strip, and Past in Flames. Mission Briefing costs 2. It's an instant with Surveil 2. And then we're going to choose an instant or sorcery color in a graveyard, and then we can cast it this turn. And if it's would be put into the graveyard, we can exile it instead. So essentially what it says, we're gonna be playing this, looking at the top 2 cards of our library, putting them into our graveyard or leaving them on top of our library. Then we're gonna be able to play an instant sorcery from our graveyard. We still have to play its casting cost, but that's very, very sweet. Bosium Strip for 3 mana. It's an artifact. We can pay 3 and tap it, and then we're gonna give an instant or sorcery card in our graveyard flashback, pretty much. And then if we pay its flashback cost, we're going to exile it. So it's cool. So it's going to be able to turn any other card into having a flashback, pretty much, flashback cost. And Past in Flames cost. Sorry, for a Mission Briefing, we take out the Bloodthirsty Blade because it just didn't synergize well with the deck. It's just a fun little card that allows you to redirect damage, let's say, but it's just not, it doesn't have anything to do with it. Whereas Mission Briefing really allows you to get play those cards back from the graveyard again, play them from the graveyard again. Bosium Strip allows us to give, of course, the cards flashback, which otherwise wouldn't have it. Crackling Drake is a beater, does replace itself, but other than that, doesn't really do anything, so we got rid of it. And then Past in Flames costs 4 mana, it's a sorcery. Each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of the turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, so essentially same as Bosium Strip, but this just does it for every instant sorcery for 1 turn. And we can flashback this again for 5 mana, giving everything again flashback for its cost equal to its mana cost. And we took out Scared Tiller because we found it a very awkward card in this deck, which has absolutely no synergy, but Passing Flames does give everything a flashback, which is exactly what we want to be doing. And then the last 3 cards, that's Charmbreaker Devils, Goblin Electromancer, and Primal Amulet. Charmbreaker Devils, 6 mana, 4/4 Devil. At the beginning of your upkeep, return an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard to your hand. And it also is going to get +4/+0 whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell. So this is a cool beater, but more importantly, every turn it's going to be returning an instant or sorcery card from our graveyard back to our hand. We don't know what it is, but we're going to be getting so much value throughout the course of this game. Keep on getting those instant sorceries back, playing them again, getting them back. And for that, we took out Gerard Weatherlight Hero, which was a nice card for ensuring us against board wipes, but a deck that really cares a lot about instant sorceries would rather just get instants of sorceries back every single turn from our graveyard. Then we have Goblin Electromancer for 2. It's a 2/2 Goblin Wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so it's great. We got a nice little discount. Also works with the flashback, so we're reducing those flashback costs as well. And of course, just the regular cost of instants and sorceries. And we got rid of Azorius Locket, which just gives us 1 mana, and it's kind of an awkward card to begin with. And finally, we have Primal Amulet, cost 4 artifact. It also states that instant sorceries you cast cost 1 less to cast. And also states that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter on Primal Amulet, and then if there's 4 or more charge counters, you may remove those counters and transform it. It's going to turn into a land. But more importantly, you don't have to flip it over. It just may. So basically just leave it like this. It's going to be giving us a discount for all those instant and sorceries, and we got rid of the other Locket, Izzet Locket in this case. So better just get a discount on everything than just giving us something that gives us mana 1 time. That is it for the upgrades for this deck. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's other cards that we missed that would work very well in here. You can either let us know in the comments below which cards you would include. Also, if you would have more than $25, or what cards would you include, which would go very well in this deck. I'm sure everybody else was very curious. If you want, you can also share it with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Budget MTG Decks. Follow us there, tweet at us there. Let us know which cards you would include in this deck, which cards you would take out, which after all is something people struggle with a lot when upgrading decks. Not only what they want to include, but which cards should you take out. And let us know if you think the cards we took out are the right cards or the wrong cards. We're very curious. Thank you very much for watching. I'm David, and this was Budget MTG Decks. Find all the cards discussed in this video in the description below. Also, show you're a fan of the channel by rocking this awesome Budget MTG Decks merchandise. This show was made possible by the support of our loyal patrons. Head on over to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and donate as little as $1 per month.